Chapter 800. She thinks that you are having an affair. When it came to a matter like this, Tang Ning was non-negotiable. She wanted to stay true to her identity and she hated having someone else involved in the character that she played. Everyone understood this, but the crew member still looked displeased. She felt like Tang Ning was making things difficult for her, because she insisted on not using a stunt double. Afterwards, Zhu Zhen comforted the woman. Ningji is doing it for the sake of the film. She is a true professional. Who told her to be so professional? It's not like anyone can see what's happening behind the scenes. No other actor is as serious as her. In reality, Lin Qiang was not too far away. Although she didn't hear the two women's conversation clearly, she could tell that the crew member was complaining. Afterwards, Lin Qiang fetched some water for Tang Ning and returned to her side. Be careful of revenge from crew members like that. People like her may seem insignificant, but they are usually the most dangerous. Tang Ning lowered her head and drank from the glass of hot water. Her voice was gentle but cold. We'll see if she dares to do anything. This time, Tang Ning filmed her scene while enduring her injuries. Even so, she managed to shoot it all in one go. Ha ha, no wonder she is the Fate Yan Best Actress. She is indeed amazing. The director gave Tang Ning a thumbs up. Of course, due to Tang Ning's professionalism, the crew did not feel worried anymore and could let out a sigh of relief. Following on, Zhu Zhen's shoot was also unusually smooth. In fact, she no longer asked Tang Ning for help, yet her acting improved quite a lot. The director claimed it was thanks to Tang Ning, but Tang Ning simply smiled without saying a word. That night, after filming was completed, Zhu Zhen once again found her way into the director's room. After a few moments of affection, Zhu Zhen asked the director, "Can I get a bit more time in front of the cameras? Even if it's just a few extra seconds." The director furrowed his brows, ready to reject her, but Zhu Zhen used her usual method to make it impossible for a man to reject her in bed. In the end, the director gave up and agreed. Because, he had indeed had many women in the past, but none of them pleased him as much as Zhu Zhen. Meanwhile, Tang Ning was in her room video chatting to Mo Ting on the phone. The couple had only been separated for a few days, but they always seemed to have endless things to talk about. Mo Ting had never been a talkative person, but, when it came to keeping his wife company, especially after they hadn't seen each other for a few days, he actually had so much to say that Tang Ning could barely get a word in. "Mr. Mo, I know that you miss me, but please take good care of our babies." "But I want to take care of you more," Mo Ting said seductively. "Has anything happened on set?" "Nope, everything's fine," Tang Ning replied with a nod. To prevent Mo Ting from seeing her injuries, she deliberately wore a jacket. "I will be home soon. After that, I will keep you and the babies company forever." "I'll be waiting." Mo Ting understood the extra meaning to Tang Ning's words. She had deliberately added the word "a" forever. "But, Survivor will not be the end to your acting career." "Has Gogo been having a fever?" Tang Ning changed the subject. "Yes, but only slightly." "You need to trust Lu Guanglai," Mo Ting replied. "Ting." "Yes?" Mo Ting's voice was charming. "I want to hug you." "But, I want to have you," Mo Ting said as he looked at Tang Ning with burning passion. "This won't do. I'm going to come rest with you tomorrow." "Is that necessary?" Tang Ning laughed. "I'll be home very soon." This time, Mo Ting did not respond. He simply stared at Tang Ning for a while. However, he didn't want to delay her resting time. But, in the end, he was set on his decision. He had to go see Tang Ning. So, after coaxing the babies to sleep, he gave Xia Yuling a phone call and asked the two mothers to take care of the kids. "Where are you planning to go so late at night?" Xia Yuling asked. "Did something happen to Yao Ning?" "She's fine. I simply want to see her," Mo Ting said before he stepped out the front door. Driving to the shooting location took roughly 5 hours. That meant, by the time Mo Ting arrived, the sun would perhaps be already up. But, when it came to Tang Ning, Mo Ting didn't mind. So, while Tang Ning was sleeping, her phone suddenly rang. Tang Ning looked at the time. It was only 4 a.m. Thinking that something must have happened to her kids, she quickly sat up and picked up the phone. But, all she heard was Mo Ting's deep attractive voice. "Open the door." Tang Ning was in disbelief as she walked over to open the door. Before she could react to the tall handsome man standing in the doorway, Mo Ting directly pushed her into the room and pressed her against the wall. "You're already the father of 2 kids. How could you be so impulsive? Tang Ning couldn't help but sigh. I only have 3 hours. Mo Ting did not want to waste time on talking as he immediately jumped into action. In the past, there were a lot of things that were impossible. But, after being with Tang Ning, he no longer made conclusions so easily. After an intense round of lovemaking, Tang Ning fell asleep. Mo Ting originally wanted to sneak out and leave, but Tang Ning grabbed onto his hand in her sleep, and whenever he moved, she would wake up. Of course, no matter how oblivious he was, it was impossible not to notice the injuries on her arms. However, he did not want to bother Tang Ning about it at this time. Sleep a little longer. Let me walk you out. Tang Ning shook her head as she got out of bed. To prevent unnecessary troubles, she decided not to notify the crew of Mo Ting's visit. So she was relatively cautious as she walked him out. But, the thing that surprised her was, a moment after Mo Ting left, she noticed Ida Zuzan sneaking out of the director's room at the end of the corridor. The two women's eyes met. They both had complex expressions on their faces, but neither woman said anything as they returned to their rooms. The next day, just before filming started, Zuzan approached Tang Ning while Lin Qian wasn't around. I never thought that Ningji would sneak around behind President Mo's back. So, you were actually coming out of the director's room this morning? Tang Ning asked. I hope that Ningji can help me keep this a secret. It's because I like the director's powerful presence. Of course, in return, I will also help you keep your secret. Tang Ning let out a gentle laugh without saying anything. This Zuzan appeared like she had found someone that was the same as her. Assuming that Tang Ning agreed, Zuzan turned around and left. At this time, Lin Qian spotted Zuzan leaving and asked Tang Ning, was she trying to ask you to teach her again? Tang Ning shook her head as she explained what she saw that morning. So, Zuzan is sleeping with the director and she thinks that you are having an affair? Lin Qian held her forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. That's not good. This Zuzan sure can't be underestimated. This could mean that she'd pose a threat towards you for the rest of the film. Chapter 801, I hate being threatened. Let's just wait and see how she plans to threaten me. Tang Ning looked down, but it was obvious that she was wise and farsighted. Tang Ning hated being threatened, but some people wanted to dig their own graves. Did Zuzan think that she could do whatever she wanted on set just because she was sleeping with the director? Zuzan obviously didn't know how to play the real game of underhandedness. While filming, Zuzan thought she had a hold on Tang Ning's secret. So during their scene together, she winked at Tang Ning suggestively. She expected Tang Ning to respond, but Tang Ning simply glanced at her and remained indifferent. Zuzan was a little baffled. She refused to believe that Tang Ning didn't feel guilty at all. So, she looked at Tang Ning again and gestured for her to go talk to her on the side. But, as usual, Tang Ning ignored her. Zuzan was flustered, but she finally gave up as she sat quietly to one side. She waited until Tang Ning finished filming and sat down to have lunch before she sat down beside her and said, Ningji, I was asking you to the side earlier because I had something to say to you. Go ahead, Tang Ning replied without lifting her head. Zuzan unhappily pulled out her phone from her pocket and showed Tang Ning. This is a photo I took this morning. Tang Ning took a glance. Zuzan had captured a photo of Mo Ting's handsome back. I admit that I'm not a good person, but how good do you think you are? If I revealed this to the public, your previous image of an understanding wife and loving mother will be completely destroyed. So? Tang Ning asked. I'm not asking to take your role as the female lead, I'm simply asking for your assistance. After all, it wasn't easy for me to get to where I am today. Isn't this something that you should do as a senior in the industry? Especially since I have your secret in my hands. Don't forget that you and the director also have a thing going on, Tang Ning retaliated. But you don't have any proof. Plus, you wouldn't reveal it because it would be of no benefit to you if the film comes to a standstill, Zuzan said proudly. Am I right? I never thought that the arrogant Tang Ning would be just like any average person. How do you want me to assist you? Tang Ning asked as she held back her urge to laugh. I want you to introduce me to advertisers so I get more exposure and have more chance of becoming famous, Zuzan said shamelessly. Otherwise, neither of us will be happy. Zuzan thought, in Tang Ning's current status, She would definitely care about her reputation, especially since her husband was Mo Ting. If Tang Ning did something reckless behind Mo Ting's back, she would be making herself into an enemy of Hairui's. So, she felt that the evidence she had in her hands was extremely valuable. But, in reality, Tang Ning was unfazed. I hate it when people try to threaten me, especially when they aren't anything good themselves. If you want to expose me, go ahead, do whatever you want. Zhu Zhen was stunned. You don't care? That's impossible. I know you like to play mind games with people. Fine. If that's the case, I'll give you one day to think it over. It's your choice whether I keep your secret or completely destroy your reputation. After speaking, Zhu Zhen walked away. A moment later, Lin Qian returned. As she watched Zhu Zhen walk away, she furrowed her brows. It appears, she tried to threaten you already. Yes, as it appears. Tang Ning nodded. What did she want? She's extremely greedy. She wants all sorts of things. Tang Ning shook her head helplessly. I've already secured surveillance footage from the hotel. No matter what Zhu Zhen tries to expose, she will simply prove that President Mo entered your room. Lin Qian put away the evidence in her hands. But, how do you plan to deal with Zhu Zhen? After all, the director is involved. Just like she said, without evidence and without admittance from the director, I would merely be slandering her. Tang Ning looked at Lin Qian with deep meaning. I guess, with evidence, things would be much better. The director's room is a blind spot. The cameras couldn't capture anything from that end of the corridor. Lin Qian replied. This entire thing has become quite interesting. Tang Ning looked at Lin Qian carefully and noticed she didn't have a single trace of worry in her expression. She was extremely calm. It was definitely a waste for someone with such mental strength to simply work as her assistant. Are you sure that you want to hide behind me for the rest of your life? Quan Zai is bound to find you sooner or later. At the mention of Quan Zai's name, Lin Qian froze. However, she didn't say much. She simply replied, let's talk about it when it happens. Meanwhile, Mo Ting had noticed the injuries on Tang Ning's arm, so he sent someone to investigate and discovered that she had fallen down a well. He also discovered that she was currently looking for the culprit behind her accident. So, he had no choice but to buy the best healing ointment and got someone to deliver it to her. Tang Ning understood that this was a sign of Mo Ting's concern for her, as well as a warning. He was warning her not to get hurt again. President Mo is meticulously thoughtful towards you, Lin Qian sighed admiringly. He sure is good. Keep an eye on Zhu Zhen during filming this afternoon. Right now, she is filled with arrogance because she thinks she is controlling the director and threatening me at the same time. Don't worry, I will keep my eye on that dirty and annoying fly, Lin Qian replied seriously. As expected, Zhu Zhen was annoyed that she couldn't threaten Tang Ning earlier that day, so she deliberately caused trouble for Tang Ning during their scene in the afternoon. The first few times, the director already noticed it, but, due to the fact that she was his secret lover, he let it go. However, towards the end, even the staff began to notice that Zhu Zhen was deliberately stealing Tang Ning's screen time and even had physical contact with her. Zhu Zhen, what are you doing? The director yelled. Zhu Zhen looked at the director and rubbed her eyes. Sorry director, I'm not feeling well. You can't make Tang Ning repeat herself so many times. Even if you're not tired, she is going to feel tired, the director said angrily. We'll do one more take. If it doesn't pass this time, Zhu Zhen can sit out from filming for the rest of the day. However, after a few more takes, Zhu Zhen found all kinds of excuses for herself and the director accepted each one. Tang Ning was extremely tired, but Zhu Zhen looked pleased. This was exactly her motive. She wanted Tang Ning to know that the director only listened to her and would forgive everything she did. She even walked over to Tang Ning and whispered beside her ear, why don't I hook you up with the director as well? I don't mind sharing a man. Tang Ning glanced at Zhu Zhen, but did not respond. Instead, she said to the director, Director, why don't I try Zhu Zhen's role and give her a demonstration? The director looked at the two women and finally agreed. Come, Tang Ning, show Zhu Zhen what to do. Chapter 802, Teach her how to behave as a person. Although the younger sister played by Zhu Zhen was saved by Tang Ning's crazy character, after arriving on the island, she was extremely cautious of her, especially when the two women set up camp in some thick grass. In the scene, Tang Ning's character fell asleep against a tree and the sister tried to knock her out and run away. However, Zhu Zhen played this scene multiple times. As it was mainly psychological, most of the scenes were close-ups. The scene of Tang Ning being hit was originally in the next scene, but Tang Ning told the director that she could act out both scenes together. Fine, Tang Ning can't try both, the director said. After listening to the director, Zhu Zhen's expression changed. She wasn't sure if Tang Ning would take the opportunity to seek revenge on her, so she said to the director, "Director, Tang Ning is going to hurt me." "You're talking nonsense. Tang Ning is a professional, how could she hurt you?" the director asked. "Haven't you wasted enough time?" "Really, director?" "Enough with the nonsense. As soon as Tang Ning is ready, we can get started." Tang Ning nodded and immediately swapped roles with Zhu Zhen. In an instant, she transformed into the paranoid younger sister. Every little movement and she would tense up. Zhu Zhen was shocked. She never expected that Tang Ning would be able to play her character so well. Most importantly, she perfectly portrayed the emotions of fear, caution and hopelessness. Especially when she lifted a rock above Zhu Zhen's head in the end. Although she wasn't going to really hit anyone with it, Zhu Zhen screamed in fright and her legs got weak. "Great!" the director praised. "Tang Ning, you are an acting genius." Tang Ning looked at the director and smiled. Afterwards, she transformed back into herself. But, Zhu Zhen was thoroughly frightened. "Zhu Zhen, do you remember how to do it?" At this time, Zhu Zhen simply focused on settling her fears. How could she even focus on a single word that the director said? Forget it. "Get some rest first." Tang Ning must be tired as well. Zhu Zhen couldn't move at all until her assistant stepped forward to help her up. At this time, Lin Qian approached Tang Ning's side and asked as she covered her with a jacket, "Ningji, why did you suddenly make a move?" "Because she has a disgusting mouth," Tang Ning said, summarizing her feelings towards Zhu Zhen's earlier suggestion. "What if she treats you in the same way?" "On set, she has no chance of hurting me," Tang Ning replied confidently. "I will make her pay back for everything, including the well incident." Previously, she had wanted to find the culprit because Zhu Zhen hadn't stuck her head out. But now, Zhu Zhen had delivered herself into her arms. If Tang Ning still didn't know who the culprit was, it would be an insult to her intellect. Who else on set would be as tricky as Zhu Zhen? Lin Qian did not reply, but gently nodded her head in agreement. She was aware that there were plenty of people like Zhu Zhen in the industry, and Tang Ning had merely met one of them. After being frightened by Tang Ning, Zhu Zhen was a lot more cautious of Tang Ning after filming recommenced. But, when she thought about the fact that she was now playing the attacking role, she cheered on the inside. Tang Ning gave her permission to act a certain way. So, she acted according to Tang Ning's demonstration and hit her on the head with the prop like a terrified bird. Of course, it didn't really hurt, but she still applied full force. At this time, not only did Tang Ning's character not lose consciousness, she immediately woke up, assumed Zhu Zhen wanted to kill her, pounced on top and started hitting her like crazy. Great! Tang Ning's explosive power is amazing. At this time, Zhu Zhen finally realized that she had fallen into Tang Ning's trap. She had deliberately provoked her to act like this. And her desire to teach Tang Ning a lesson was so strong that she had forgotten the response from Tang Ning's character. "Tang Ning, you are despicable." Tang Ning did not say a word. She simply held onto her jaw and stood up. "Despicable." "Tang Ning, you need to guide Zhu Zhen more often. If you have spare time, you should teach her." "I will, director," Tang Ning replied with a smile. However, she wasn't going to teach her how to act, she was going to teach her how to behave as a person. By the time that filming ended, it was already 9 p.m. Lin Qian helped Tang Ning back to her room, but halfway there, she ran into Zhu Zhen. To be exact, Zhu Zhen deliberately chased after her. "Tang Ning, do you want me to expose your secret?" Tang Ning was originally tired, so she had no intention of responding to Zhu Zhen. Lin Qian understood her, so she gestured for Tang Ning to return to her room and to leave everything for her to handle. Zhu Zhen originally wanted to chase after Tang Ning, but Lin Qian stopped her. "What do you want?" "I already told Tang Ning clearly what I want. Tell her to come to my room at 11 p.m. tonight. Otherwise, I will send the photo in my hands to the media." "I don't care about your 11 p.m. All I know is, if you do anything reckless, I will let the entire cast and crew know that you are sleeping with the director, Lin Keon said as she opened the film's chat group on her phone. Suzanne, don't say I didn't warn you. Stop being such a disgusting person. Otherwise, Ningji's patience will reach its limit. It seems like Tangning wants to go down together. At this point, Lin Keon wanted to know the conditions that Suzanne wanted to set, so her tone became a lot more gentle. Suzanne thought Lin Keon was honestly intimidated. How about this? Tell me what you want and I'll see if we can do it. HMMPH, I knew you would be scared. Suzanne thought she had successfully threatened Lin Keon, so her expression turned a lot more arrogant. Recently, there's been a resource that I've been struggling to get my hands on. It's the makeover of Global Style. I want Tangning to recommend me and help me secure it. After Lin Keon heard this, she nodded her head. We can think about it. Just sit back and wait for the news. Then it's set. That's how you should have behaved all along. Suzanne laughed happily. Meanwhile, Lin Keon went to tell Tangning about Suzanne's motive. Since she wants it, let's contact the editor of Global Style. Huh? Lin Keon was confused. Tell them that they can't use Suzanne under any circumstances. Tangning instructed. Lin Keon laughed and nodded her head. Although, I don't quite understand how things operate, I will give Vice President Fang a phone call and ask him to help. Tomorrow, there was going to be a good show. Suzanne would never have imagined that Tangning contacted the magazine for something negative, rather than helping her like she expected. Holding on to Tangning's a secret, Suzanne was afraid that Tangning would strike back, so she decided not to visit the director's room for a while. But, even if she didn't go looking for him, it didn't mean he wouldn't go looking for her. Suzanne was wary, but she still let the director into her room. Unfortunately, by doing this, she once again fell into Tangning's trap. Chapter 803, How Did You Offend Tangning? Global Style magazine was unlike the top-tier magazines that Tangning used to partake in. It was actually a home furnishing magazine, but plenty of B-list artists still tried to fight for the front cover. Suzanne was aware of where she stood. She knew she couldn't rush things. So, she simply asked for this one front cover. In fact, it was one that was scheduled for May. Suzanne was living in a fantasy. She thought that if she continued to hold on to Tangning's secret, Tangning would continue to give her benefits. So, Global Style was just the beginning. It was a resource that her manager had been working on for a long time without any luck. Her manager couldn't do anything, so Tangning should be able to, right? Not only this, but Suzanne began to imagine many things. For example, climbing to the same level as Tangning, finding a man and marrying into a rich family. But, the next day, just before filming, Suzanne approached Lin Keon and asked, "How did it go?" Lin Keon glanced at Suzanne, completely ignoring her arrogant expression, and said casually, "It was too late last night and the editor was asleep. I'll make sure to contact them tonight. Don't worry, I'll wait for the good news then. Otherwise, don't blame me for doing something not so pleasant." Lin Keon let out a gentle laugh and did not give much of a reaction. She wasn't going to waste her time on getting angry at a person like that. The atmosphere between the three women was a bit strange, so even the staff could sense something was wrong and began to speculate amongst themselves. "Hey, did you guys notice? Why does Suzanne look so arrogant every time she talks to Assistant Lin? She's just a measly insignificant nobody. How dare she act like that in front of Ningji? I know, right?" She even claimed that Tangning would hurt her during their scene yesterday. Who does she think she is? In comparison, look how Tangning is completely indifferent. She is indeed the queen. She knows how to convince people. As Suzanne left, she obviously heard the chatter because she turned around and glared at the group of people. But, she did not retaliate because she knew she was not at the level to do so. However, she looked down upon Tangning on the inside. Tangning was obviously a tramp. How could all these people respect her? How unfair. "Ningji, I've given Vice President Fang a phone call. He said that it's a small matter and he will handle it. But, not only will he convince the editor of Global Style not to use Suzanne, he will make it so she gets no style-related jobs at all. Not even the ones that have already signed contracts. Filming is about to start. I'm going to go get prepared." Tangning nodded, insisting on doing her job well. This was the industry that she was passionate about, so she wasn't going to let Azuzan affect her mood while acting. It wasn't necessary. Don't worry. Lin Qian smiled. Tang Ning smiled and headed onto the set. The reason why Tang Ning didn't feel like Zuzan was an eyesore on set was because she placed 100% focus on her acting. No matter who she was acting alongside, all she saw was their character in the film. However, Zuzan was full of tricks. She continuously gestured to Tang Ning with her eyes that it didn't matter whether she was an A-lister or extra, she was but another woman who liked to mess around and that they were no different. Soon, the morning shoot ended and Lin Qian approached Tang Ning with a jacket. After she wrapped her in it, she led Tang Ning over to have lunch. But, Zuzan chased after them. To prevent Zuzan from distracting Tang Ning, Lin Qian immediately turned around and said, "Wait for the news." After receiving a response, Zuzan naturally stopped chasing. She simply cheered on the inside about the front cover that she was about to secure. In fact, she maintained this state of mind until the afternoon and let it impact her acting. Although Zuzan was his secret lover, the director couldn't help but yell at her, "Zuzan, what are you daydreaming about? Do you know how to act?" "Director, I'm tired," Zuzan whined. Even Tang Ning hasn't complained about being tired. "Why are you whining?" the director asked. "In your current state, you will only leech a bit off Tang Ning. You look nothing like an actress." Zuzan did not like this comment, but she did not refute. After all, it was daytime and she couldn't possibly do anything affectionate to the director, so she could only accept every bit of scolding that he threw at her. Soon, she received a phone call from her manager. Zuzan knew straight away that it was an update regarding the magazine's front cover. So, she immediately asked for some time off and ran to a hidden spot to pick up her phone. "Zuzan, which day and May will the photo shoot take place?" Zuzan asked. "What are you talking about?" Her manager was confused. "Aren't you calling me about the front cover of Global Style magazine?" Zuzan said with complete confidence. "Well, it's true that the editor of Global Style called, so I got it right." Zuzan cut in proudly. "I secured this job on my own." "Didn't I do a good job?" "No. I was going to ask you how you managed to offend Hyrule." "The editor of Global Style personally called me and told us not to take a step near their agency again. They said that they will never use you as a model because Hyrule has warned them not to. Otherwise, they will need to face the consequences." "What?" Zuzan was stunned. She did not believe what her manager said. "Did you make a mistake?" "Number. The editor clearly told me that Tang Ning instructed them not to use you." After hearing this, Zuzan's body shook in anger. Most importantly, not only Global Style, but also every magazine that has any ties to Hyrule has clearly said that they will never take you into consideration for anything. Even a contract that we previously signed has been cancelled at the last minute. How did you offend Tang Ning?" Zuzan's manager was mad. It wasn't easy for her to find an artist that understood the rules of the industry, yet, she had been completely destroyed now. "Aren't the two of you working together at the moment?" Zuzan was no longer in the mood to talk to her manager as she directly hung up the phone and rushed to the set. She then approached Tang Ning and asked in a lowered voice, "You've really ticked me off. I'm going to get back at you real soon." Tang Ning smiled slightly and waited until Hera break time before she gave Mo Ting a phone call. "Ting, where are you?" "I will be arriving on set in half an hour." "Okay, I'll wait for you." Although she wasn't affected by Zuzan, it was still annoying to have a fly constantly buzz beside one's ear. So, there were some things that didn't need to continue dragging. Chapter 804, You misunderstood, but I didn't. "Tang Ning, you've truly angered me." Zuzan stormed over to Tang Ning's room angrily with the intention to cause trouble. However, she discovered Tang Ning was with Mo Ting. The couple were leaving Tang Ning's room to go somewhere. The timing was perfect. Zuzan wondered how the almighty President Mo would feel after he discovered his wife had been cheating on him. So, she quickened her step and caught up to the couple just before they headed downstairs. "Ningji, there's something I want to talk to you about in private. Can we step aside and talk?" However, Tang Ning did not accept her request and replied, "I don't hide anything from my husband. If there's something you want to say, then say it." "Are you sure?" Zuzan asked with a trace of danger. "Are you really not worried that I'd reveal your ugly side to President Mo?" "Give it a try," Tang Ning replied straightforwardly. Of course, Her gaze contained the same amount of danger. Susan looked deep into Tang Ning's eyes and realized she wasn't afraid, so, she pulled out her phone, swiped to the photo she had previously taken and showed it to Mo Ting. President Mo, the woman beside you, the wife that you love so dearly, she's been cheating behind your back. After saying these words, Susan waited to witness Tang Ning's fate. This man was Mo Ting. If Tang Ning didn't receive a slap across her face, that would be quite a surprise. But, Mo Ting simply looked at Susan coldly without a word. President Mo? Mo Ting looked at the phone and handed it back to Susan. Don't sneak a photo of my back next time. Your photography skills are horrible. After hearing this, Susan looked at Mo Ting in shock. Is this your so-called evidence? Susan finally realized what had happened. So the man that had snuck out of Tang Ning's room that night was Mo Ting. Yet, she not only thought Tang Ning was having an affair, she even tried to threaten her. All of a sudden, Susan felt completely embarrassed. Sorry, I'm sorry, but I think I had a misunderstanding. You misunderstood, but I didn't. Mo Ting held onto Tang Ning's hand and clasped each finger tightly. You've done something that my wife hates the most. How do you think I should deal with you? Ningji, I won't do it again. Speak to President Mo for me. I won't do it again, Susan immediately pleaded. However, Tang Ning simply glanced at Susan casually and left the hotel with Mo Ting hand in hand. She was going to keep Susan hanging so she'd understand the true feeling of fear. As a result, Susan's fear indeed increased. After all, the public had always said that Tang Ning never went easy on her enemies. So, who could she seek help from? After thinking for a while, Susan went to look for Lin Qian. Seeing Lin Qian eating, Susan ran over to her crying and sat down beside her. Assistant Lin. What is it? Lin Qian asked patiently. Weren't you having fun threatening Ningji this morning? Why are you crying now? I misunderstood Ningji. Could you please ask her to be magnanimous and forgive me? If this scandal gets exposed, it won't be good for the film either. Susan tried to use the film as an excuse to stop Tang Ning. Don't worry, Tang Ning will consider the bigger picture, Lin Qian replied. Really? Mark my word. Lin Qian smiled confidently, while her eyes contained a sense of kindness. Susan swallowed, aware that she had made a big mistake. She no longer had the courage to remain in front of Lin Qian, so she directly returned to her room. That night, during filming, Tang Ning didn't mention a thing. Hence, Susan breathed a sigh of relief. But, during lunchtime, Lin Qian had spoken to the director in private. Director, did you know that Ningji has been receiving threats from someone? Lin Qian asked. And do you know who this person is? Although the director could guess that it was Susan, he did not dare to say her name. After all, he also felt guilty. Tang Ning acknowledges your professionalism as a director and we have no right to question your private life. But, we hope that you can maintain your clarity. The fact that Susan is brave enough to threaten Tang Ning shows that she is willing to do anything to achieve her motives. I hope the director can look at the bigger picture and protect the reputation of the film. This is what you've promised President Mo the most. After hearing this, the director's face turned red. He was obviously a bit uncomfortable since his secret had been exposed. As for what to do, I'm sure it is an easy thing for you to figure out. In the meantime, Tang Ning will forget about this entire matter until filming is completed. The director understood what Lin Qian meant. Susan wasn't someone that could be kept by one's side in the long term. So Lin Qian's words were a sharp reminder that it was time to put things to an end. Offending Tang Ning was equivalent to getting on the wrong side of the entire Hyrule. This Susan was much too brave. Tang Ning had already done enough to protect his pride by simply asking Lin Qian to throw a few hints. So, it was only right for him to accept this favor. Don't worry, I will give Tang Ning a satisfactory answer. After leaving this seat, I will also forget everything. You don't need to worry either. The director nodded his head as a thankful gesture to Lin Qian and Tang Ning. If he let Susan blow this matter up and it got exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. So, the director looked into the distance knowingly. That night, Mo Ting and Tang Ning were out having dinner. Seeing that Tang Ning was completely unaffected by Susan, Mo Ting smiled and asked, Did you know that someone slandered my wife today, so I was a bit upset? There's nothing to be upset about. It's not the truth, so it's not necessary to blow the situation up, Tang replied. There's no point wasting time on insignificant people. I'm upset because she actually dared to threaten you. Mo Ting placed the steak that he had cut up in front of Tang. She actually had the guts to do it. Tang lowered her head and thought for a moment before she suddenly lifted her head and said, Ting, I have a thought. I've actually considered it for a long time, but I'm not sure if you will agree. Mo Ting put down the knife and fork in his hands and wiped the corner of Tang lips with a napkin. He then said dotingly, tell me what it is. You know I've never been able to reject you. However, Tang shook her head and looked at Mo Ting firmly. I'll tell you after Survivor finishes filming. Okay, I'll wait then. Mo Ting patted Tang on the head, treating her like a precious gem as always, even though they were already parents of 2 children. Chapter 805. Let her continue with her act. The director weighed out the situation and eventually decided to suppress Zhu Zhen with pressure. So, he gave the screenwriter a phone call, and after a long chat, he finally achieved his motive. However, during that entire night, Zhu Zhen felt that her every second on set was extremely hard to endure. Not only had she treated Mo Ting as some wild stranger, she even thought Tang was having an affair and tried to threaten her. Just the thought of it gave her chills. How was Tang planning to respond to it? Later that night, Mo Ting delivered Tang back to the hotel and left Lin Qian to take care of her. After Mo Ting left, Lin Qian said to Tang, Zhu Zhen is currently sitting beside the hotel pool, threatening to end her life. Do you want to see her? She's been begging for your forgiveness. Has she revealed the entire matter to the public yet? Tang raised an eyebrow. From what she said, observers will only assume that she saw President Mo's back and misunderstood you. That's it, nothing else. And the scene she's been causing to gain pity will only make people think that you bullied her, causing her to run around in a panic. I won't take part in this commotion because I don't want to waste any more time on her, Tang said as she removed her coat. Let her continue with her act. Lin Qian smiled and nodded her head. In that case, get some rest and I'll return to my room. Tang gestured for Lin Qian to go ahead, but at this time, Lin Qian's phone suddenly rang. After glancing at the caller ID, Lin Qian decided to ignore it. From the looks of it, it was definitely a call from Quan Sai. If you want to ignore him, why do you still have a method of contact that he can reach you on? It was obvious that Lin Qian cared about him and didn't completely view him with disdain. Ningji, fine, I won't get involved with your private matters, Tang said before she entered the bathroom. Lin Qian returned to her room and let Zhu Zhen self-destruct by the poolside. Eventually, a passerby approached to join the crowd and check what was happening. But, after seeing that Tang did not show up, it was obvious that this insignificant nobody was trying to add to her act. In that case, none of the words that came out of her mouth meant anything. Zhu Zhen continued putting on a scene until late into the night. Actually, her intention was to see how the director would react, but it was obvious that he simply treated her like a convenient prostitute. Zhu Zhen shivered in the cold night air, but no one cared. In the end, she had no choice but to return to her room and not let anyone continue to treat her like a joke. The next day, Zhu Zhen stepped onto set and noticed the abnormal look in everyone's eyes. So she lifted her chest and walked confidently. It wasn't like she had done anything wrong. Zhu Zhen, after seeing Zhu Zhen, the director handed some documents he prepared to her. This is the new script provided by the screenwriter. Both yours and Tang's screen time has been affected. Have a look. Zhu Zhen received the script and flipped it open to have a look. That's when she discovered that her role, which was supposed to last until the end of the film, was now made to sacrifice herself as soon as she found her sister. As a result, her screen time was cut in half. Director, Zhu Zhen wanted to reason with the director, but the director laughed and said, "This is the screenwriter's decision. There's nothing I can do about it." But, this actually works out. There's a new production that I'm familiar with. They're currently making preparations and I was planning on recommending you to them, but you were previously unavailable. So it all works out now. The director used a common tactic to brush off an annoying actor. Not only had the new production not finished with its preparations, even if it was ready to begin filming and the director had recommended her, the production probably wouldn't accept her anyway. But, was she really that oblivious to what the director was thinking? As a result, She said quietly to the director, "Director, there's something I want to talk to you about." "If there's something you want to say, then say it," the director replied. "Are you not afraid that I'd reveal the matter between you and I to the public?" "Ha ha, Susan, if you want to self-destruct then go ahead. I wonder how many people will trust you, and even if they do, I wonder who will be affected more. I could always move to working behind the scenes and no longer appear in the public eye, but what about you? If this matter gets revealed, do you think you'd still be able to survive in the entertainment industry?" Susan never imagined that the director was even more shameless than she was. "Do you remember what you said when you first seduced me? You said that you didn't want anything from me and that you were merely lonely. Don't tell me that I was the one that actually said those words." Susan looked a bit uncomfortable, like she had swallowed a fly, but she deserved all that was happening to her. After all, she had provoked someone that she shouldn't have. After enduring for a while, Susan put away the script and said, "I hope you can follow through with your promise and recommend me to the other production." "Of course," the director replied casually. Susan hated herself at that moment. From the moment she first debuted, even though her path hadn't been all glitz and glamour, no one had ever escaped from the palm of her hands. Yet, this time, she had slept with the director multiple times without gaining any benefits whatsoever. It was all Tang Ning's fault. Seeing that Tang Ning continued to be respected on set, Susan reacted like she had been possessed. But, it didn't matter. Even if her screen time had been cut in half, she was going to find an opportunity to get revenge. Since Tang Ning made her suffer in such a way, she was going to make Tang Ning suffer too. Tang Ning would have to wait and see. Even from a distance, Lin Qiang could clearly see Susan's expression and could tell that the director had made a move. So she approached Tang Ning and said, "This woman might end up holding a grudge against you. We need to be careful from now on. Did you think that if we went easy on her, she would have been grateful?" Tang Ning shook her head with a laugh. "If she had her way, then life would be much too unfair for everyone else, even though the industry is full of battles." "I understand. From now on, I'll keep a close eye on her every move." Susan acted indifferent, but she had no intention of letting the cast and crew of Survivor off. After this incident, Susan quietened down a lot. But, this did not prevent Lin Qiang from keeping her guard up. Because, according to Tang Ning's prediction, this was merely the calm before the storm. Susan is about to complete her scenes. If she is smart, she will agree to the director's suggestion and move to another production. "Do you think that she'd act stupidly?" Lin Qiang asked. "What do you think?" There was a sense of wisdom in Tang Ning's eyes. "If she is smart, she will know that pestering the director will merely put her in a worse position." "I'm worried that she has plans to go down together," Lin Qiang concluded. Susan had been fully focused on acting over the past few days and didn't say much. It appeared Lin Qiang's prediction was highly likely. "I'll do some investigating and see who she's been meeting with lately."
Hit the like, thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.